The Birth Circle podcast features experts in all the nuanced areas of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, with the aim of helping women make the choices that will keep them safe, healthy, and empowered. We respect all birth choices and believe in supporting informed consent and evidence-based practices. Nothing said on this podcast should be taken as medical advice. You should always seek the advice of a competent professional for your care. Welcome to the Birth Circle podcast.
This is Sarah with Birth Circle, and today I have Julia Aziz with me. And Julia is a licensed clinical social worker and a Reverend chaplain, and a holistic psychotherapist. She's an ordained interfaith minister, and she's on the faculty at AOMA Graduate School of Integrative Medicine. And she supports women struggling with anxiety, grief, and big life changes through individual counseling, hypnotherapy, and the Release and Empower online community. That's a weekly women's practice that combines writing, movement, meditation, and personal sharing. And she's also the mother of 3 children and the author of Lessons of Labor, One Woman's Self-Discovery Through Birth and Motherhood, and When You're Having a Hard Time, the little book that listens. So thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, it's great to be with you.
So first of all, how did you have a lot of background in helping people through just the general populations through grief and trauma. So how did you get your little niche in birth and postpartum?
I'd say that's probably from my own experience having my children. When I remember in the middle of the night after my first baby was born, I was in shock, really, and was just amazed at that. Everyone had talked about the pain of labor, but they hadn't talked about the extreme emotional, mental, spiritual challenge of facing pain like that and not knowing what's going to happen. And I started just writing it all down. I couldn't sleep at all, and I just kind of poured it all out. And over the course of 10 years, that book arrived, but it also really, I had already been working with parents before that and new moms, as a counselor, but having my own children is what, it was a different depth of experience of my own experience, and seeing how it changed me and what a challenge it was, really, the transformation into becoming a mother. And that, made me passionate about supporting moms.
Yeah. How old are your children?
My kids right now are 9, 12, and 14.
So this is still, you're still postpartum 9 years. My baby's 9 as well. It's still happened yesterday.
Yeah.
So what is holistic psychotherapy? What is that, and what does it look like?
I use it sort of as a blanket term, but basically it means that I integrate mind-body approaches into doing therapy. So generally when people think about talking to a counselor, they're thinking about doing talk therapy and, talking about their problems and listening and strategies and things like that. And I incorporate, because I also have a background in more spiritual and personal growth work, and have done, work with writing and dance and movement. So I'll incorporate somatic release, using the body and the voice to release stress and trauma and, pent up energy, as well as using mindfulness and meditation. Sometimes we talk about different approaches, herbal support. Generally, I'll refer, to a naturopath or someone for that. But basically, it's about taking a holistic approach to what's going on with somebody. So it's not just about changing strategies in the mind. It's also about how we feel them in the body, and also about how we tune in with the spirit.
Got it. So you said the word somatic. What does that mean?
Somatic generally refers to body-centered approaches. And it's, again, kind of a blanket term. So depending on, it's used in a lot of different theories and modalities, but the way I use it, I call the work that I do, for instance, in the groups that I run, I call what I do somatic release. And what it really is intuitive movement and vocalization. So I basically am encouraging women to remember their wildness, to kind of go back into their, I'll say, like, we were all toddlers at some point. We all knew how to just move around all crazy and like just do whatever felt good in the body, so encouraging women to kind of come back into their bodies, let their body move out whatever, because we store a lot of emotion and stress in the body. So by just letting the body show the mind what it needs to do, and also opening up the voice, allowing for kind of like strange and crazy noises to come out. And it's really about, we can get women especially are taught to be, nice and polite and like kind of stay in this box and do the right thing and take care of people. And somatic release is really about like, how can I like just kind of like move that stuff out, like wherever it is that I'm holding it, and be more intuitive and trust that my body can show me how it needs to heal.
Got it. Okay. So, I'm just kind of like touching on all of your points, and then I have got some pointed questions about birth, but you're an interfaith minister. And so you work with people from lots of different faiths. What are some of the different approaches that people take, according to their different faith communities?
Yeah, well, I'd say I mostly work with people that feel that there's not really a place for them in organized religion. I myself am Jewish, and I went into an interfaith seminary because I really wanted. I feel like there's a lot of spiritual neglect in the world, and some of that has to do with the way people have been disconnected from religion and feel like it doesn't work for them, or they have to believe in a certain thing to be involved in it. So a lot of my work is about helping people to trust that they can have that own personal connection, and that there's a, sort of a personal spirituality where you can, whatever words you want to use, like I tend to use the words of whoever it is I'm working with, like for some people, God language doesn't feel right, but they connect more with something like universe or source or love or higher self or something like that. But it's really about supporting people in dropping down into something that is quieter, and where you feel connected, and where you feel that the answers that you need kind of come one at a time. So I feel like I went off, I'm not sure, I went off on a tangent on the question, but you were just saying how to.
Yeah, no, I love that, where you're talking about using the language of the person, like as the birth team or the provider, using the language of the person, but just as the person, as the birthing person, deciding what language you want to use. What I remember assisting a mom in birth, and she had recently left organized religion, and pretty spectacularly left, like done.
Mhm.
And we had, common vocabulary that we'd both been raised with, but she was no longer interested in using that vocabulary. And so to assist her through her birth, it was a cool experience to, like, in my mind, shift all my language, because what surprised me is that everything was still true.
Yeah.
We just changed words. So instead of saying, God or say a prayer to Jesus, it was, where's your inner light? What does your inner light say? It was just like really kind of a cool experience. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, my approach is really to get to the essence of things, and to, the rest of it is almost like the outfit that you're wearing, like you might be wearing a different outfit, but underneath there's an essence that's part of what I find so fascinating about world religions. Like there's a thread that is similar in all of them. A lot of the teachings are very similar. And so, sometimes people feel like, well, completely alienated from spirituality because they don't connect with religion. But the truth is that connection is there for all of us. Oftentimes people find it most in nature. But when it comes to birthing, ways that people might bring that in might be songs that are reminiscent of childhood, or things that just, really bring them comfort, or even being able to pray in a way that is different than the way they learned. Like, when I work with people with prayer, it's not about like, who am I praying to and what does that mean? That's like up here in the mind.
Yeah.
It's really about like, what's in your heart, like just speaking from the heart, like just knowing that, feeling how love and support are around you, though they may look like it's coming from different sources and not what we're imagining, but really dropping in to appreciate what is there.
Yeah. So, how about trauma? How do you help a woman with severe trauma navigate birth?
I think that depends a lot on what the trauma is and how that's showing up for her in the present. You know, because that is really it's such an individual experience. When there's been sexual trauma or birth trauma or something that's very present, that's a really important thing to get support with as a woman's preparing for birth, because that will come up, like in the birthing experience. And a lot of trauma work has to do with being able to stay in the body and not dissociating, being able to stay in the body and being able to feel emotions and be able to kind of feel the love and support while staying in the body. What's interesting about birthing is that in a lot of ways it is a dissociative experience, for a lot of,
Well, I was going to stop you there and say, what's dissociation and how do you know if you're doing it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I felt definitely disassociating during, especially my first childbirth, because it's just so overwhelming. This whole thing's going on in your body, and it's like I remember having that experience of like my mind is like saying all kinds of sort of normal things. All this stuff is going on up here. My body's doing this crazy stuff, and it feels separate.
Yeah.
So sometimes I do think the psyche is kind of self-protective in that way. So sometimes when women have had significant trauma, that will happen, and that's kind of protects them during the experience of childbirth. But really, childbirth can be a healing experience for a woman that has gone through, has had a lot of trauma, especially if she's really gotten the support that she needs before that. And oftentimes that is working with a therapist, but it can also be working with a trauma-informed body worker. I use hypnotherapy with that as well. Yeah.
How do you differentiate between traumas coming up and anxieties coming towards the birth and hormonal changes? I mean, those are three distinct things. But they feel all a big mess.
Yeah. I think that in the mental health field especially, we can make things really complicated, and then everything feels like a lot of work. It's just like I've got so much. It's all so much work, and so
Whoa, amen. Because everyone's all about process, and nothing that's wrong with that. But that's what our culture is all about: processing and watching triggers and being and it just feels like a lot of work. Okay, keep talking.
Right. Now I have to process this. Now I have to process that, and then this is.
My yogurt, my all-you-can-eat yogurt place has shut down, and now I have to process that, like COVID.
Right. Oh gosh, yeah. There's never ending, and I think that's maybe part of when we're now all there's so much stimulation. There's so much trauma.
Yes.
We're living in a trauma time, like it's constantly happening. We have to come back down to the earth and to this moment only. It's like, where is that showing up for you right now? Because people have survived. I mean, everyone who's alive here right now comes from a lineage that has survived a lot of things in history. You know what I mean? So people have gone through horrific things, and you can read, like Viktor Frankl's memoir, or, just like, there's so many examples of people who have survived horrible circumstances. So trauma does not mean that you are destined to suffer and even process for the rest of your life. Like I like to focus on resilience and and just keeping things simple as to what is it in the moment. Not everything has to be processed. I think some things, like one thing I do in these women's group, like we start out just by dumping out the mind. So just like all this stuff that's going on and this thing and that thing. And I don't know what happened with this and I feel this way. And then just doing a little breathing and asking, what does my heart say?
Yeah.
Like sometimes we really just need to be seen and feel the compassion of our own hearts. And we can't solve it. We can't make it go away. We can't understand it all. We don't get resolution with everything. But we can know that we're loved. And we can come back into, okay, am I okay in this moment? In this moment, is my body okay? I have food to eat. I'm breathing. That's all we have.
I had somebody tell me actually yesterday that dwelling on the past is depression and thinking too much on the future is anxiety and the present is always peace. Like, and I'm, at first, like my knee-jerk reaction was like, nah, I mean, there's somebody who's mad at me right now. She goes, well, no, you're sitting right now here in this seat.
Right.
Are you okay? Well, yeah, but as soon as I'm done with this, then I'm going to have to get on the phone and solve this problem. And she goes, well, that's in the future. Again, you're focusing on the future. And I'm like, oh, you got me, girl.
Right. I think that's where the refuge is in coming back into just this moment. Because if I can live through this one moment, then maybe I can live through the next one moment, and it's like really just slowing it down, because we live so much in our heads and all the things that we think we have to do and all the ways that we think we have to heal. It's like healing becomes like a project or something.
Yeah. Well, and even labor itself, it's every moment.
Yes.
You just handle them one at a time. You don't get the entire labor in 1 minute. You handle it as it comes.
Absolutely. That's definitely, I think that's getting into the flow with it. I think being able to be in that contraction and then be in that pause between the contractions, and I see it so much, like this is we're as a culture, as a society, we're in a contraction, like we're in a contraction, and then, okay, but each of us individually has moments of like, okay, and then there might be another contraction. Okay. And then, the contractions are what allows, the body to expand, and so it's like we have to.
And the mind, honestly.
Exactly. The mind too. And so it's, I think shifting out of this mentality that we're supposed to be sort of happy and everything is resolved and, like some standard that is not actually what a human experience is. A human experience is all of it. It's anger, it's joy, it's sadness, it's ecstasy, it's contraction, it's expansion. We just have to be, it's like the willingness to be with right now.
So if you have significant trauma in your past, coming to centers, coming to present is really helpful. But sometimes in labor, in birth, you don't have the wherewithal to really pull it. Like things just come up whether you like it or not. So what are some of the things that you would recommend doing to kind of help? I mean, especially sexual trauma, because birth seems to agitate that, at least in my view, or in my experience watching women. Sexual trauma comes up big in birth.
Absolutely. Which is why it is really helpful to do a lot of that, to do a lot of processing and, somatic work before the birth experience. I would say first and foremost to do that. And I don't think there's a recipe. Like, I don't think there's like, okay, these 3 strategies are going to be the best for anyone who's giving birth, who's had sexual trauma. Like, I really think that finding some supportive helping professionals, whether that be, a therapist and a doula, or, somatic, a body worker, that really get to know you and what you need and help you design sort of what's going to be best. And, for some, I think a lot of times having a focal point is really important, and that's going to be different. What's going to work for each woman, but like really, because when you're in birth, you don't want to be a Zen, or maybe you want to be, but you can't be really. I don't know anyone who can be like the Zen master. Like, I'm just going to, like breathing.
Yeah.
It's a wild animal experience, it's huge, right? So having the mind be able to focus on something is really important. That's why things like hypnosis are helpful, to drop down into a more trance-like state and be able to focus in a different place. That can be useful. For some women, it's like being able to vocalize is really important. A lot of it, is like the setting and who's around you, and what kinds of things are going to make you feel settled in your nervous system. But I don't think that there's like an answer. There's like one answer, like this is what one should do if they're birthing and they've had sexual trauma. I would say to any woman that is feeling really nervous about that, to seek help beforehand. Like, you don't have to suffer in that alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the role of medication versus some of these other natural, well, I don't know, other therapies, alternative therapies? And when is medication a good tool? When is it maybe not a great tool?
I think that's a question that each person needs to answer for themselves, because I've seen medication be really empowering and do wonders for people. And I've also seen it have really hard side effects and worsen symptoms and make it and be kind of too intense, too strong a strategy. And there's really, a lot of it to me has to do with whatever we take into our bodies, that we feel good about what we're doing. So if you choose to take medication that, I'm taking this because I love myself and I want to regulate my nervous system, or I want to relieve some of these symptoms I'm feeling. And I feel good about doing that. If you're taking medication and you feel shame around it and you don't really want to be doing that, and, it might be worthwhile to get a second opinion and maybe talk to, a acupuncturist or a naturopath, or someone who can talk, an herbalist, someone who can work with you on gentler methods. But I don't think there's one right way. I think it really has to do with trusting where you are, and that's going to change over time. Like, for a lot of women, like, medication might help them in that year after they have a baby with postpartum depression, but after a while they don't want to be in on it anymore and they shift off, so it's about being flexible and knowing what's right for you.
Yeah. You mentioned these other modalities like acupuncturists and naturopaths. So talk about like some of these other modalities, because I know a lot of people, they just think you just go to a doctor or you go to a psychiatrist. But what are some of these other modalities that you can look at?
What other things can help you? Yeah. I think, I'm someone with what they call a highly sensitive person who, when I take a Western medication, I'll get every side effect there is. Like, it's almost like it's just, it's more intense medicine than my body can process very easily. So I've had many years of exploring alternative medicine, and I teach the graduate school I teach at is actually acupuncture students. But there are plants have been used throughout human history to help with all kinds of physical and emotional issues. So there's so many herbal medicines, whether it's Chinese herbs or it's herbs that are local to the place that you live. There's food, changing your diet can make a big difference. Healing the gut, can help with anxiety and depression. Hormonal changes, acupuncture can help with that. Herbs, lifestyle changes. There's so many ways that we can help ourselves. And so if working with some sort of, there's so many different types of providers out there that I would say, to me, it's most important to find somebody that you trust, because there's lots of different things that can help you. But I would say generally, when it comes to mental health, and alternatives to medication. There are some integrative psychiatrists that you could talk to. There's also people in the alternative health field that specialize in mental health. So that might be something to look into. But I would recommend talking to someone who is professional in that area rather than just kind of playing around and experimenting on your own if you're having serious issues happen, because herbal medicine often takes longer. It's gentler, so it takes longer to affect something. And so people will give up too soon, but if you have someone kind of overseeing it, it's easier to kind of stay on target and to try out some different things.
So if one technique is not working, like if you say a lot, listen to your heart. So if something's not settling right with you, find a different provider with maybe perhaps a different modality or more resources, different resources.
For some people find like their holistic doctor, or however you want to call them, and it's just like they always go to them. Like I know people who's just like, I only go to this acupuncturist or something, and they help me with everything that goes on. For some of us, I'm one of these people, like that's never worked for me. I haven't found like this is the person that's like has saved my life. That's not how it is. So to me, I take an intuitive approach. It's like, what's the next best step? What am I needing support in right now? I might look at my dreams, or might look at, sometimes things start showing up in your consciousness a little more often, and you're like, what is CBD oil anyway? I keep hearing about that.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I want to explore that,
I love that. When things come up in your consciousness, it might be a good time then to look into that.
Yeah. I mean, I think Facebook takes advantage of such things. But there's lots of ways that
free our mind. Yeah. Well, no, but I mean,
but yeah, I mean, I haven't been moving enough. Like maybe I'd like to explore some kind of movement oriented therapy. It's okay to kind of just tune in and see just what is the next step. Where am I it's like we're always balancing. Like I think we're often searching for this balance as though it's going to be this stability that will never change. And I think it's really more about balancing. It's like, I'm getting really anxious and I'm not sleeping, and so it's like, I'm going to need something to balance that in terms of slowing down a little more and grounding. And like, what do I feel drawn to? Like, what do I feel excited about exploring? Like, what is my body telling me that it needs?
Yeah. So I just want to go here with you because of your vast experience in helping women across all religious backgrounds as a chaplain. But how can a mother who grew up in a very rigid religious community, that's not leaving that rigid community, but how can you help her prepare for a more holistic spiritual birth experience?
A woman that is currently a part of
very rigid. Yeah. What would you say to her? And then what would you say to a birth worker trying to assist her?
Well, I would try to find someone within her community to support her. I wouldn't I'm not the right match for everybody. And I think that anyone who says they are is missing something, I think it's really important when a woman's giving birth that she feels safe.
Yeah.
More than anything else. I mean, if you just look at animals, they need to find where they're going to feel safe, like they're going to hide in some kind of cave or something, it's like, that is of primary importance. So, she needs to find someone that she feels like she can actually, she can breathe deeper around, that she feels comfortable with. So I think in terms of, and I'd want to know what kind of birth does she want to have, you know, and who needs to be on her team. Like that has a lot to do. It's just such an individual question, like I've known women that have had like not only their mother and a doula and a partner, but like every friend and neighbor around and burdening with them, you know what I mean? And then others, it's like, no way, I don't want anyone else there. Like I want privacy. I don't feel comfortable like that, you know? So, yeah, I would look for resources within her home community and really, you know, if I were to talk with someone in that situation, to encourage her to trust that she knows what she needs best.
Yeah.
And that primarily that's what's important.
I love that. And you mentioned before we started recording about ritual that sometimes birth can bring out the most beautiful rituals. And if they're in line with your religious experience, that they can be even more meaningful.
And a lot of women don't feel like they have that, you know, feel disconnected from that. I'd say most of the women that I work with feel that way. And, you know, I've sometimes facilitated blessing ways. I don't know if you're familiar. Yeah. You know, and I think it's really freeing to realize like we can be creative, you know, we can make meaning out of what's personally meaningful, you know, and create our own ritual and draw from whatever backgrounds you come from. You know, you might even explore, you know, for especially if a woman feels disconnected from religion or community in that way, to kind of explore farther back in her own lineage, you know, like what did my mother and her mother and her mother and her, you know what I mean? How did birth, you know, how was that supported in the past, you know, and just know we all came from somewhere, you know, and we can bring that out with us.
Oh, I love the idea of bringing the generations past. That is so yummy. Very cool. Yeah, I know a lot of times I feel like, I've just observed that sometimes because our religions don't usually teach anything specific around birth, that women kind of feel like they're going into birth into an unknown and they don't have there's always there's a religious ritual around what you do on Sunday or what you do on Wednesday night or what you do in the morning or how you pray or what you wear or what you eat when you eat it. But there's not a lot of religious, except Blessing Way, which is a native tradition. You know, they have a lot of, or the Cuarentina in the Mexican culture, they have these rituals, but a lot of religions don't have.
Well, I think it's not been recorded. I mean, a lot of institutionalized religions are not recording women's experiences. Like what were the women doing? What were the women doing? You know what I mean? So I don't know if you ever read The Red Tent, but that book always just really struck a chord for me of like, you know, the way that women supported each other in birth before we had hospitals and things like that, you know, like when there's midwives and the women gather around and they're helping her, and, you know, that's passed down. So I think that we all come from people where those rituals were happening, and it's just that we've lost it. You know, we kind of like lost the chain, and now more and more are really yearning for that. But it's so there. I think we just have to go farther back.
Yeah, go farther back. And maybe like if you don't know the farther back pulling in ritual, like I know there's a midwife locally that loves to invite the partner to like physically bless the birthing person, like put their hands on her and give her a blessing. And I think that's such a cool, like, small ritual that she says she asks them, you know, before they go into the birthing time, she asks them if that's okay. Would it be okay if when I feel like the timing is great, would you be okay if, and I've seen that's lovely. They pull that in.
Absolutely.
You know, that they get the partner has the opportunity to pray over their spouse, and I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so many creative and beautiful ways that we can bring that in. You know, one of my favorite, I don't actually know where this comes from. I'm sure it comes from somewhere in the Blessing Way. I don't know if you've seen this, where you tie a string around the wrist and you pass it around and then introduce yourself like, I am Julia, daughter of Betty, granddaughter of Helen and Hilda. Yeah. And each woman is, you know, like naming the mothers before her. You know, I think that's a really beautiful way to kind of call in, like, you are one in a line here, you know what I mean? Like, and you're supported from behind as well as around you.
Yeah, I love that tradition. And then you wait until she's in labor, and then you can
Pick
you
up your
wear that.
dirty bracelet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you wear your piece of dental floss. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
Or sorry, not dental floss, embroidery floss, or
Yeah.
we have one gal around here that makes it out of beautiful silk, so you feel a little less
Yeah. Yeah.
embroidery flossy. Sure, dental floss would work too. So, what do you say about the weird dreams that women get in pregnancy? Can like
Mm.
dreams be used to access like bits of healing, or like be able to calm anxiety, or find, you know, to find
Yeah.
balance in the what the heck with the dreams?
I know pregnancy dreams are amazing, vivid. Yeah, I think it's a wonderful time to do some dream work. I mean, the the best piece I'd say of advice around that, I'd say, is just to keep a journal right by your bed, so that you catch it as soon as you wake up. They even sell, I have a little pen that has a little flashlight on it, so you can even write in the dark if you need to. But yeah, to just, try to capture it as soon as you can, and then to do some exploratory work with it. Robert Moss is somebody that I really like, his approach with active dreaming. He has you like title the dream and kind of go back into it and see what it might be trying to teach you. And is this, some dreams are sort of psychic dreams. Other dreams are more about processing what's going on with you. Some might have to do with somebody else. But there's so much material there,
Yeah.
and especially in pregnancy, so much material there that might be also really fascinating for you later once that baby becomes a child and you get to know them. It's there's a lot to explore with dreams. The reason I like his approach is that it's not so much interpreting like this means this and this means that.
Yeah. Because there's a lot. If you dream about baby animals, it means this.
Right. Right. Yeah. I think I think there's more depth to it than that.
Yeah. I mean, what does it mean when I dream about nothing but chocolate in my low
You
on
might want some
magnesium?
chocolate. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, the dreams, and some of it's just hormonal, right? I mean, you're just bathing, you're like marinating in these hormones.
It's incredible. It's such a powerful experience. I mean, I think um it's like all things in one. It's like every emotion there is, all the hormones, every physical sensation there is. To me, it's like such a really coming into the animal body. It's like
Ooh.
this
Yeah.
is remembering our animal selves, and to me, that's sort of like the divine feminine.
Yeah, I love
Kind of that
that.
like wild and
Yeah.
creative and destructive, and
Well,
yeah,
when you're talking about being in the present, well, animals are always in the present. Animals
yeah,
don't worry about the past or the future.
yeah,
So I like that comparison. It's kind of coming into our animal body,
yeah,
staying
yeah.
present.
Yeah, and watching, I don't know if you've ever seen an animal give birth, but I've only gotten to see that a few times. But it's I don't know. I think it could be a cool thing to do in preparation,
Totally.
because it's just amazing to watch that and see, see how present it is and raw, and to give ourselves permission to be that raw too.
Yeah.
It's empowering.
So I want to, since you have such great experience in as a chaplain, I wanted to go a little bit into the loss realm.
Mhm.
So what would be your advice for pregnancies that end in loss? How can you help a mom transition from the state of managing the anticipation and the fear of what might happen, and to the state of just managing grief?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. It's really important to have a lot of patience around grief. And there's so much when with a pregnancy loss, because it's not only the loss of this child, it's also the loss of all these dreams that
Yeah.
the couple or the mother had. And then there's this, I mean, really, she's given birth, so there's also all the hormonal changes of that happening. And so the first thing I would say is to give a lot of is basically to give a lot of space to it, like to really not rush or think that you're supposed to get over it really quickly. for some women might want to talk about it and others might not want to. It's really about giving permission to let feelings come through. And there's a lot of emotion with losing a baby, with losing a pregnancy, as well as, again, like this massive hormonal shift that she's going through. And so, I think part of supporting that is, moving through like kind of the phase where there's shock and also there's all the physical recovery that's going on. But to be able to honor that the way that we honor other losses, so whether that's just a private altar or memorial or, a burial or some way, it's like for when other people die, we have a funeral and we gather and we talk about them. And it's really hard with a pregnancy loss because there's so few that are connected and no one is connected quite as much as the parents. And especially the mom was the one who had this child inside her. Or even, sometimes there's miscarriages and that's a whole, that can be a different level of loss of feeling like there was no one in there and I felt this, and there's just so much emotion that comes with it. So, but even honoring that entire experience is really important. And, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. I think it has to fit with who you are, but some way of, having a memory of a way of honoring, like, this was real and this happened and this love was real. These dreams were real. Is an important part of the process. And then also just really letting go of these expectations that it's supposed to go a certain way, and there are some women that they kind of like the way of coping is that within a week or two, they're like, all right, let's try again, and that's one woman's way of coping. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. And it's also okay if you're someone that it takes, you're crying for months, and it's really like something that because it might bring up other losses, it's like one loss, grief is like that, you have a loss and it will bring up like, when your dad died, it's like bring up a lot of different things. So, a lot of permission, a lot of compassion, people will say things that aren't always so helpful.
Like zero helpful.
Right. So you may, you might need to take some space from them for a little while, and just be around people that are okay with you talking,
or come up with some really snarky replies.
Right. Yeah. And I think if you're somebody who doesn't know what to say in those situations, just doing something like, bringing a meal or a book or a card or something, just like showing you love someone is better than telling them, oh, it's okay, you'll get over it, you'll have another baby. Like that's useful to nobody.
We should do we could do an entire episode of things not to say.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
All the things not to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I love you talking about that. You talked about patience, especially patience with yourself, but also patience with the grieving person. And everybody grieves on a different timeline.
Yeah. And that can be different with it, if there's a couple that, and one deals with these things different than the other, that can happen as well. And it's just, everybody processes differently.
And I guess
it's okay.
Sometimes it's hard. I've had some friends have some incredible losses recently, and it's hard. Like, what do you say? What do you not say? How do you be there for them? And one gal that I'm closest to, I just asked her, I was like, is it okay if we keep talking about your child? Like, is it okay if I like bring up their birthday and like bring up their, like, oh my gosh, that reminds me of that child? And she goes, yeah, actually that would be really nice. And I was like, it's not going to trigger you or anything? She goes, no, it'll just, and I was like, okay, I just had a big girl conversation. But maybe for others that wouldn't be like helpful, right?
I think it's great that you asked her. I think it's great that you asked her and got that affirmation. And sometimes it's just like a matter of, sending a text, like thinking of you, like, I love you,
Yeah.
Just letting someone know that they're on your heart in that way. And yeah, I think remembering, a really dear friend of mine, lost triplets. This is quite some years ago now. And, every year on that anniversary of their birth and death, they were stillborn, I would just reach out to her, you know, and just, what are you going to, you know, what are you going to say? But it's really just like, I'm thinking about you. I love you. You know, I remember this day with you.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I think that, there's this, when you see somebody suffering, it's natural to want to fix it or make it better.
Yes, I know that's the problem.
So,
yeah.
Right. And so with grief, it's just important to know, okay, it's not my job to fix it. And if I try to, that's going to make this person feel really unseen and probably way guarded against me, you know? So it's like, it's not, there's nothing to fix. It's part of the human experience, loss. This is, you know, everyone we love and attach to, we will lose at some point. I mean, whether it's we die or they die.
There's the somber moment.
Sorry, by the way. Sorry to break it to you.
I know,
but, you know,
burst my bubble.
but you know, it's coming into acceptance of that. It's like, okay, it's all right to feel really sad sometimes. It's all right to feel angry. It's okay to be grieving and be laughing, you know, to have moments where you feel just fine and then kind of crash again, you know? And I think to be a good friend to someone is really just about allowing that to be okay. Just letting someone know that you're open to talking, you're open to not talking, like that you can kind of just go with what needs to happen in that moment and take yourself off of the, you know, it is not your job to fix it because you can't. And it's better not to pretend.
Yeah.
There's something you can do.
Oh, I love that. I love that. It's not your job to fix it. I mean, we get that, but in so many other parts, it's like, oh, you lost your job. I'm sorry, that sucks. You know, like, hey, you know, we want to come up for dinner or when, like, but when it's a death, and especially the death of a baby or the loss of a pregnancy, it's like we just don't even know how to like be ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's more about listening than what you say. You know, it's more about just checking in. And a lot of times when people have a loss, like in the beginning, everyone's like, oh, are you okay? Oh my gosh, what happened? And then, you know, a week later, maybe somebody says something, but a month later, nobody's really checking in anymore, you know? And so I think if you can be the friend that does check in and be like, how's it going? You know, I'm thinking about you. And maybe they don't want to talk about it, or maybe they do, I don't know, but you're just letting them know that you're available and that you know that that this is still with them, you know, while everybody's kind of moved on, but you know that that's something they're still carrying.
That's cool. So do you have a favorite phrase or a mantra that you like to give moms to help them like continually release fear as they prepare for their births?
I don't know if I have, I mean, I'd say, I don't know if I'd have a mantra that for all women, but I do think, you know, something to do around trust, something to do around surrendering and trust. And those words might not resonate for everybody specifically.
So I guess you would advise them to write their own based on.
Yeah, I would advise a woman to, you know, what is it that she needs to, basically what is it that settles your nervous system? You know, like what makes you like,
chocolate.
You could use chocolate. You could like, you know.
Birthing is like eating chocolate. Chocolate is birthing. No, I'm just
spell
playing.
The word chocolate while you're having a contraction.
I'm just playing. You know what I mean? But I love that. So finding something that calms your nervous system. Yeah.
And just remembering like it's safe to trust my body. You know, my body can do this on its own.
It's safe to trust my body.
I don't need to control this. You know, this is about letting go of control and trusting my body. My body knows exactly how to do this. My body was made to do this.
Yeah. And what happened in the past and what might happen in the future, it doesn't matter.
There's nothing we can do about it. Like all the rest, you know, I sometimes talk to clients about like these two lists of like, what can I do and what's out of my hands, you know, and there's so much out of our hands. And when it comes to giving birth, it's like so many things outside of our control. Don't have control over that. Like that goes not in my bucket. That's not in my, you know, what can I do? Like what I can do is I can ask only the people that I'm going to feel most comfortable and supported by to be there if possible.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to, if there's whatever it is, like maybe it's music and blah, 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 but all of those things in the end, it's really you and your body, you know, it's like really, all it really takes is you and your body, you know? So it's trusting, just trusting that the body, we, you know, a woman's body was made to give birth, you know, otherwise this is how it's meant to happen.
Yeah. And you can see it in other animals too. It's just meant to happen. And
it knows, it has its own intelligence. You know, the
like
body you don't need to take a class, right? Like we take classes to learn how to give birth, but the truth is we're animals and our bodies give birth.
So it's much simpler than we're making it. You said that
I think we make everything more complicated. Yeah. It's like this. And I think that, you know, some of what's happening in this pandemic and so many things shutting down, you know, just there's so many losses going on now, you know, but a lot of what's happening is like we're having to slow down and get things simpler, you know, like what is really important? You know, there's still a food supply here, like awesome, you know. Good. let's be grateful for what we've got. Yeah. Awesome. So how do people find more about you, find your book? My website is just my name.com. So www.juliaaziz, JuliaAziz.com. And I have a newsletter and a blog and this online community and all kinds of things, but that's where you can find.
Is it a Facebook group?
No, this is, it meets once a week on Tuesday evenings, and we basically do self-healing practice together. So we do a writing practice, and we do what I was talking about, somatic release, a guided meditation, and then a brief sharing where we're just witnessing each other rather than doing crosstalk. And so it's like a weekly practice for women who are often caregiving for other people, like moms, to make some space for themselves, for their own.
And this is online, right? Do you do it on Zoom or Facebook?
Google Meet.
Google Meet. Very cool. Yeah. Awesome. So to find out more about that, they just go to your website, Julia Aziz.
Yeah, and you can look up the Release and Empower groups, Release and Empower online.
Awesome. And your books are on Amazon?
Yes.
Cool. Thank you so much. It's been really, really interesting. Thank you so much for your insight.
Oh, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Sarah.
Please visit us at birthcircle.com, join our Facebook groups, or find us on Instagram and Pinterest. We hope you'll use our resources to support your birthing experience.